Assalamualaikum everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Again, as Arafa mentioned, my name is Muhi Khwaja. I am so happy to be here with you guys today, and hopefully would love to learn a little bit more about you and the organizations that you're supporting, how long the organization's been around. Irshad Bhai, if you can just tell us a little bit about Rahima Foundation and Sister Laurel, about the organization that you're with, that would be great. Sister Laurel, can you go first?
Oh my, I didn't know I was going to be talking. Oh. Oh gee, well, okay. So about 10 years ago, Muslims in the Sacramento, California area began to realize that Muslims had the same problems as anybody else, any other community, any other group. People were struggling with marital relationships, in-law relationships, parenting, especially teenagers, so problems like divorce and family antagonisms, and so on, and children really frustrating their parents and parents frustrating their parents. So an organization was started under Muslim American Society of the Sacramento area.
Okay.
A project of MASS. MASS has several projects, a summer camp with so on and so forth. The youth, Muslim MCYC Youth Center in South Sacramento. But Muslim American Society project called Social Services Foundation was started. And we have our own board of directors, we have our own bylaws, and we have a shared tax ID number with MASS. Okay? So 10 years ago, we began to train peer counselors and begin community education and information and referral. Those are major services. I don't have my cheat sheet in front of me, but that gives you an idea. And so for 10 years, we've been providing those services to the community.
Got it.
Okay.
That's a great overview. Thank you. And then Brother Ishraq?
Yes, thank you. A very quick summary of Rahima Foundation. It was started 24 years ago in Ramadan by my wife, actually, Habiba Hussein. I was busy working in IBM, so I wasn't really involved on a day-to-day basis until I retired 3 years ago. So I joined Rahima Foundation on a full-time basis 3 years ago as executive director. So mainly the organization has a few things that we've been focused on. The most critical one is that we provide food or groceries to about 400, a little over 400 families in the Bay Area. So we're focused only in the Bay Area. We're not like a national or international kind of organization at this point. So we give like roughly $150 worth of groceries to each family.
Okay.
And total amount is about 13 to 14 tons of groceries a month that we give out.
Great.
And pretty much every day people come, take it. The second important thing that we do is, and that uses the zakat money. The food money is only through the general or sadaqah money.
Okay.
Two accounts in the bank, and we keep that separate. So zakat is used for providing financial assistance to the client. There are many people who are at the verge of becoming homeless.
Right.
They're just making it. So what we do is supplement their rent, PG&E, those kinds of things.
Sure.
Some people get transportation help, telephone bills, and those kinds of things. But that helps to keep them stay at home so they don't lose their homes.
Great, great.
That's the other critical thing. But those are the two main things that I wanted to mention.
Okay, thank you so much. And this is great for me to hear this so that when we go through this, I can try to give you guys more ideas. And it seems like both organizations have a lot of stories that you can tell to the general public, and it's curating that story that will take some planning, but when you do it effectively, you'll be able to appeal to many people with that story as well. So I just want to make sure at this moment that you guys can see my screen. The PowerPoint presentation is the entire screen?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I can see.
Wonderful. So let's dive into it. This is what we're going to be learning today. We want to empower you to make the most of your social media. We want you to learn about crowdfunding resources and email marketing platforms, and then utilizing the best industry practices for that amongst nonprofits. And we also want, and then we also want you to be able to get inspired about sharing your story with other people, and then how you can best prepare your plans going forward. So I may have lost the PowerPoint screen. One second, sorry.
By the way, are you going to send us a copy of your presentation?
Yes, I did share that with Arafa, and she'll pass it out to all of the
Oh, great. Okay, yeah. I just wanted to know so I don't take too many notes here.
Okay, no problem. So you'll be able to follow along, inshallah. And then what I'm going to do at this time is also mute everyone, so that way I can go through. And then any questions that you have, there's a raise your hand button, or at the end we can kind of take them as well. Excellent. Okay, so inshallah, just we want to focus on making plans as well. So what is the first app that you open every morning, right? A lot of people, they're always on their phones, they're always looking at their email, they're always looking at their social media accounts, and then from there, most people will go to a news site, or they'll go to their chatting apps and then listen to music or go to photos and just kind of get on with their day at that point. So this is helpful to see that, majority of people are always looking at their mail and social media. So we want to be able to be reaching out to people in these avenues as well. And I wanted to start with a quote from a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, where he says that God is beautiful and he loves beauty. So we should really take this as an inspiration to always put our best work forward when we are reaching with people and communicating with people. So the best parts of MAS, the best parts of Rahima Foundation, you want to be sharing those examples with the community. And this is just a piece on global nonprofits and how they manage their social media. So I would assume that, a lot of our organizations, they rely on volunteer support, whether that's board members. They may have a part-time staff, or it's really rare that they'll have full-time staff. But even those full-time staff or part-time staff, they're being stretched in so many different directions, and it's hard to always focus on one aspect of their job when they're responsible for so many different things. So what this points out to is showcasing that, across 5,000 nonprofits in over 150 countries, these nonprofits have communication staff that are leading their social media. They have part-time or full-time staff that are doing it, or they have their executives who are doing it as well. But it's also neat that 18% are volunteers. So, you can have a committee on your board, or you could have an intern for the summer, or you can hire people on a part-time basis and give them the sole responsibility of focusing on your social media. And if you take those steps, you'll be more likely to have a written social media strategy plan. You'll have more opportunity to actually pay for advertising. And one of the great resources that any nonprofit can take advantage of is called Google for Nonprofits. And what it allows you to do is Google has an entire marketing campaign called AdWords, AdWords, AdWords. And what AdWords does is when people are searching online, the keywords that they search, they'll be able to target specific advertisements to those keywords. So for instance, if somebody says hunger Bay Area, or if they say marital support Sacramento, you can be targeting these people to have your organization's ad show up. And the best part about it is if you qualify as a nonprofit, Google will give you a credit of $10,000 a month. So definitely something that you want to jot down is Google AdWords for nonprofits, Google for nonprofits, and go through that process. It takes about 48 hours to get approved, but once you get approved, you can have a volunteer or a staff member really learn AdWords and how to create ads and association with the keywords that your organization does in terms of service. So just moving forward, we were talking about how your organization needs to be telling a story. And you want to make sure that that story is relatable. And what you can also do is highlight your staff members, highlight people who are doing the work in your organization. Because although people may know of MASS in Sacramento or Rahima Foundation in the Bay Area, they may not know the story behind the staff members, who the executive director is, who the founder is, who the intern is. These all give more connection to your donors and supporters. So it's important that you highlight the people who are doing the work as well. And when you're on social media, people like seeing things that are funny, that are motivational. So whether it's a daily or weekly hadith or ayat that you share, you know, it might take some time to develop the strategy behind it, but it'll give you a good pulse and something for people to look forward to, especially on social media. You know, if it's in an email, you may not want to do it daily. Probably weekly is the best point of contact for emails. But even at that, once a week is a lot. If you're sending updates, you have to have different and unique content. So for email, usually I suggest twice a month at most. And for social media, you can be posting multiple times a day. There's no problem with that. And you want to make sure that you are connecting with your users on social media. If they tag you in something, make sure you respond. Or if somebody shares something with you, or if you share content from another resource, just be proactive in connecting with other people. Here's a good breakdown of you know, the different generations that we have. People born in 1945 or earlier, or the boomer generation from World War II to 1964, and the Gen Xers and people like myself, those pesky millennials. So it gives you a great understanding of how many donations they make on average, the number of nonprofits that they support. And of course, you know, the people who are older, they're generally spending more money. They're generally spending more charitable dollars and supporting more charities. But what's interesting is that, you know, the Gen Xers, people born in 1965 to 1980, and the millennials, they're giving online. So that's really what we're trying to focus on, is capturing engaging content and how to translate that into donations and support online. So again, like I said, you know, the preferred communication frequency, people like myself, 2 times on an email or more than that on social media is totally fine. And I think that's, you know, the monthly pulse is a good thing to get in the habit of. And the social services are a majority of what the millennials and Gen Xers are supporting as well. So they're supporting, 36% to 39% for social media causes, for social welfare causes. For health-related things, millennials are supporting about 34%. For food and hunger, it's 38% for Gen Xers. So this is, right on the nose for Rahima Foundation. You see that food and access to food and trying to alleviate hunger and poverty is very core and essential to the Gen Xers, the boomers, and the matures. So health is obviously important, and something that the millennials care more about than the other generations is pets. So, religion is obviously at the core for boomers and matures, and it's great that both of your organizations are in the religious context, but also in the social sphere. So you're relating to a majority of what the generational breakdown is. So a little bit more on the preferred causes. We talked about this, places of worship, health, social services, animal welfare, things that support the family or children or education. These are always the top things that people are giving to. There's a really fantastic report called Giving USA, and they give a wonderful breakdown. It's through Indiana University of what philanthropists or people who are charitable give their money to. And religion and education are always the top two. And then it breaks down into these other categories as well. But as you see, the preferred giving channels, 51% give online. So it's something that we have to crack the nugget on, telling great stories and sharing engaging opportunities for people to better understand what your organization is doing. And of course, 56% are sending a check in the mail. So, social media and fundraising online is not a substitute for sending out a newsletter in the regular mail or sending out an ask for support on an annual basis, obviously in Ramadan, and even preferably again in November around Thanksgiving towards the end of the year. Because as you know, the end of the year is probably when a majority of people give their charitable gifts as well outside of Ramadan. So, you got to keep focusing on an annual fund or some sort of request in the post office mail. But you also got to be connecting with people online, because that's where they're giving a majority of their gifts as well. So again, this was where gifts come online from, and public society and benefit and medical research and education and faith-based are in the top of that market. And people like to give to international causes as well. So, when things are happening in Syria and Yemen and other places all across the world, those are things that often people feel more passionate about supporting. And with both of your organizations doing here local work, sometimes those are the things that you're competing against. So you have to tell an equally compelling story for that as well. So here are some benchmarks that over 100 nonprofit organizations participated in. And I know this beginning is very factual and heavy, but we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how we can create plans for our organizations as well. So in terms of fundraising, gifts online have been increasing for about 15% each year since 2015. And it's also been increasing online revenue by 14% since 2015 as well. From an email being sent out to donors when they're being asked to support in a compelling story, the average one-time gift is $87. And the average monthly gift is about $23 as well. So this also can translate into your social media presence, Facebook, how many likes you have, on Twitter, how many followers you have, on Instagram, how many followers you have. So you have to create a strategy for all of these different platforms, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well. So we're going to talk about platforms, the number of users you have, and some of the best practices for social media sites. And what this next diagram shows is that the amount of global population on social media is expected to grow to 2.4 billion people. So just by being online, you're connected to this many people. And of course, you're going to be targeting people in Northern California, and based on that. But this just goes to show how much your public reach really is. And it's saying that, current to date, there's about 1/3 of every person is on a social media platform. And obviously in the US, it's probably going to be higher than that as well. So these are the different methods that you can use to engage with people. And if you want to inspire someone to take action, usually a short YouTube video is effective with that. A short letter that you send in the mail, or an online article that's really just 2 to 3 paragraphs, very summarized, not lengthy, easy for people to digest, or a post on Facebook. You see things going viral online all the time, and that's how they do it. It's inspiring, it's easy to consume and understand, it's effective in communicating to you as an individual, and you are telling a powerful story based on your organization and the work that you do. So these are things that are likely to keep people engaged with your organization when you tell a good story. So again, you want to be short, you want to be concise, you want to be straight and to the point. So this is just a general page on Facebook and what it looks like. This is American Muslim Fund's page. By any means, it's not the best example, but it's just an example to share with you. So if you are the admin on your social media account for Facebook, this is kind of the view that you would see. You would have notifications up top, just like your own personal profile, and you can then publish things on here as well, and you can create a fundraiser online as well. It'll tell you, what are you fundraising for, and you have to come up with that story as well. But the challenging thing with Facebook, when somebody gives to you online through Facebook, you won't see that gift for about 2 months because it goes to a third party, and then the third party will cut you a check about 2 months later. So there's a lag in the process of fundraising on these social media platforms. So you're still probably best to fundraise on crowdfunding or directing people to your website to make a donation online. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Twitter, this is, again, a sample of what a Twitter page will look like. You can see the most recent tweets. In this example, there was an organization called GuideStar, and they had tweeted about 5 lessons learned from donating to 25 nonprofits. And what they did was they gave $25 to 25 nonprofits, and they saw how they were treated by those organizations. Did they get a thank you letter? Did they get asked to show up on their email news? Did they get invited to like them on social media? And these were all the things that GuideStar kind of tracked, and it's a really insightful article to see how these 25 organizations responded to that $25 donation. So what we did was we just retweeted that message and said, very insightful, and had retweeted it. And all throughout Ramadan, we were posting online about our crowdfunding campaign and thanking people who had given $25 or more. So we were very active in tweeting this past Ramadan. And, we don't have a crazy amount of followers. We only have 51 followers. But for just launching this Ramadan, I feel like that, shows natural and organic growth. But of course, the goal is to get in front of thousands of people who could support our work. And the same thing for Instagram. We only have 16 followers on Instagram. We've only posted 6 messages. Our most recent one was for Eid al-Fitr. So again, it's been almost a month and a half, 2 months, and we still haven't even posted on Instagram. So, all of the advice that I'm giving you guys today about how to be engaging, we also have to do for our own organization. And it just shows you the lack of resources and the lack of time that a lot of our nonprofits are facing. So, following this presentation, I'm working with our board members to come up with a social media plan, a communications plan, a marketing plan, a fundraising plan, a strategic plan. And thankfully, we've already done our strategic plan. We've already done our fundraising plan, but we have yet to do our social media and communications strategy. So in our next board meeting, we're talking about those things. So these are all things that if your organization doesn't have them, at the end of this presentation, there's resources for you to learn how to create those types of plans. So one platform that many people don't know about is called Hootsuite. And what Hootsuite does, it connects to each of the platforms that we just saw. It connects to Facebook, it connects to Twitter, it connects to Instagram. And the great thing about it, it allows you to schedule a message to go out. You schedule it in Hootsuite and it'll automatically go out to the other platforms. So you don't need to be coming up with a message on each one and log into each site and repost it and take the time to do that. You can schedule things for Ramadan, like some of the organizations that Arfa and I have helped in the past. We went into Hootsuite and we scheduled 30 days of messaging for Ramadan. And it was really helpful because you take, the 5 hours at once instead of spending, a half hour each day. So you really have to think about what the message is each day ahead of time. But if you take the time to do that, Hootsuite is a wonderful partner in allowing you to schedule and organize your social media strategy. And if you see, like right now, it's focusing on the Twitter page, but in the top left, there are different tabs for Instagram and for Facebook. So it's a really fantastic tool to showcase what you can do and what you can be seeing as well. So in this column here on the left, it's my tweets that I've published myself. And we just saw this tweet that I was talking about on Twitter. And then I don't have any currently scheduled tweets, but if I did, it would show up in the middle. And then the same thing for Facebook and Instagram. You can even be, the best part about it is you can be tracking hashtags. And what hashtags are is when you put the number sign in front of a phrase or a word online, and then you can track how viral, how many people have seen that, how many other people are posting about that. So just for instance, even if, Rahima Foundation used the hashtag end hunger, right? I'm sure there are hundreds and thousands of other people using that hashtag. But if you started a social media campaign where your goal was to end hunger, right? You could use that word as a hashtag on social media, and people who don't know about Rahima Foundation will start to learn about it because they're also looking at that hashtag and seeing who else is posting about that as well. So again, social media, you don't necessarily need to limit yourself to a Muslim audience for social media or even for your donations, frankly. And this will be a powerful way for you to engage with a diverse community as well. So here's a little bit about a social media plan. You want to be looking into on Twitter or Facebook, whatever your goal is with that specific platform. What are you asking people to do? Are there events that you want to make people aware about? How many number of posts are you planning to do about that specific cause? And then what are key dates for tweeting? If you want to give people 20 days in advance, or if you want to be tweeting on a certain holiday, or if you want to be doing different things. And you have to create, interesting and creative options for people to be engaged. So I'm going to switch into email marketing. And I'm sure many of you are on Constant Contact or other services, but I wanted to showcase the one that American Muslim Fund utilizes, and that's MailChimp. So again, it's very straightforward. It's easy to maintain. You can come up with different lists. And the great thing about that is you could be really segmenting who you're talking to, right? If I know, for instance, based on donations that have come in from other organizations to my organization, that I have, 1,000 donors that live in the city of San Jose alone, right? I could create a list just targeting people in San Jose. So oftentimes what happens is we just have an email list with thousands of names on it, but we don't know who they are or where they live. And if we do have that data, maybe it's not in our email marketing platform. It's in our accounting software, or it's in our donor software. So we really need all of these different platforms and softwares to be communicating with one another so that we can be as effective as possible when we reach out to people. And you'll see that, I did a Launch Good campaign for all the people who donated to us on our Launch Good Ramadan campaign. I had put their emails in this system. And at that point, we only had 81 people on the list, but 50% of them had opened it. And that's a fantastic number, because a majority, I'll get into the numbers in terms of what the average is for open rates. And when people are giving to a religious cause, it usually has an open rate of 26%. So the fact that we had a 50% open rate speaks to the level of engagement that our donors feel with our organization. And then again, we did an informational iftar in the city where I'm from Michigan. And when I went there, I sent the message to 16 people, and almost 70% of them had opened up the message. And then in the first day of Ramadan, we did a webinar, and we had 72% of people open up that message. So you really want to have specific messages to specific groups of people so that they're more likely to open the message and read it. So this is a little bit about online giving and how many people tend to give online via email request. And of course, as we've become a more digital society, this is becoming more relevant. So whereas 7 years ago in 2010, it was only at 6%, it's now up to 28% in 2016. And people are more motivated to give online because of that as well. So I want to switch topics into crowdfunding and tell you a little bit more about the different options that there are. I had talked about Launch Good, and this is a Muslim-based crowdfunding platform. So I know the founders, they're in Michigan. They've raised in Ramadan $1.7 million in just 2017. And they had supported thousands of different causes, and organizations like yours, they make a profile, and in the profile, they'll have to tell a compelling story about what they're raising funds for. And usually you have a few options. You set a timeline. So you say, okay, in the next 30 days, we need to raise $10,000. And you have two options as well. It's if you hit the $10,000, you'll receive it, or whatever amount you raise, you'll receive it. So it's usually called all or nothing fundraising, or you get the amount as you raise it as well. And there are different theories behind which one is more effective, which one is best to do as well. We had a goal of $50,000, and we said it was all or nothing. So it really motivated people to see that we hit our goal. And alhamdulillah, we surpassed the goal. It all happened within the last 3 days of Ramadan. It was fantastic to see the level of output, and we collected over 700 donations on LaunchGood in the month of Ramadan. So some of the different platforms that I'm sure you've heard of in the past, a lot of tech companies use sites like Kickstarter to launch their startup ideas. GoFundMe is a page that people are familiar with to do campaigns to support people, whether it's for medical bills or for education or some sort of cause that they want you to support. And then others that people use are Indiegogo and YouCaring as well. So this just goes to show that the success that LaunchGood has had with their market of people in the Muslim community as well. And LaunchGood, they have a 51% success rate. Kickstarter is around 37%, and the rest of them are less than 10% success rate. So again, the success is really dependent on your network and who you know. I was literally text messaging every Muslim in my phone throughout Ramadan, asking them for support for the American Muslim Fund. It took a solid 4.5 days for me to do, but in those last 10 nights of Ramadan, or 10 days of Ramadan, that's when I did it, and that's when we saw the most growth in our campaign. And the average pledge on LaunchGood is $110. And that was pretty true for our campaign as well. Our average gift was about $75 in raising that $63,000 that we did. And the average amount raised on LaunchGood is $10,000. So if it's your first time getting into crowdfunding, I wouldn't go beyond $10,000 unless you're 100% certain that you can hit that goal, because you want to show success. You want to be able to have an achievable goal, and you want to surpass it as well. So that just gives you a broad base into what types of crowdfunding platforms there are. And usually what helps is having a video that you make to tell your story as well. Again, keep it under 2 minutes, have it be engaging, have it tell a story. And these are things that, your organizations should be able to do fairly easily. You know what your organization does, you know the impact that it has. So you need to focus on that and then share those stories with other people. So now we get into the fun part. We're going to talk about creating a plan. And this is where, if you're not taking notes, you want to make sure to take these notes and start thinking of ideas. And of course, you'll get the presentation at the end, but this will really help you come up with your goals of how you want to be more effective with your social media strategy and how that's going to translate into fundraising as well. So when you establish your goals, you really want to think of a few things. You want to think of how much money it is that you want to raise. You want to think of how many people you want to increase your followers and number of likes and number of new donors, because you should always be tracking in your donor database how many people gave this year that are new donors, first-time donors. And what you should also focus on, even more importantly, is how many donors did you get to give again from last year or from 2 years ago. And you want to look at your retention, right? You want to retain X amount of donors from the 2,000 donors that you have, right? And you want to make sure that those donors that you're retaining are becoming more engaged with your organization. So these are key things that you always want to be focusing on. And it's really important that if your organization doesn't have donor software that can pull these types of reports, you should highly consider having, a software that will tell you these things. Because QuickBooks is great, but it's only a financial tool. It's not going to tell you who the names of people who gave 2 years ago that aren't giving this year. And the reason why it's important to look at those metrics is because it's a lot easier for you to convince somebody to give again who's already given than it is to get a new donor to give a larger amount, right? Somebody who maybe only gave $100 2 years ago but hasn't given a dollar since is more likely to give you another $100 or even more going forward. Whereas if you meet somebody new, they may only give you $50, and then the next year you want to get them to increase it. But the idea being that you should always be able to retain your previous donors if you engage them properly, and social media and email is the perfect way to do that. So you want to make sure, especially with an organization that's been around for 20 some years or 10 years, you probably have data in a lot of different places. You probably have old Excel sheets. You probably have old paper sheets with sign-in names and emails. You need somebody to go through and curate all of that information and put it into a master list. And hopefully that master list can then be put into your donor software. Hopefully it won't create duplicates. You can run duplicate reports and a lot of these things so that it matches up. If you already had somebody's email and then you're adding it in, it'll pair it up. Or if you know that somebody's email is not in the system, accounting software or donor database, you can then match it up with that person. So these are very necessary things for any organization to do before they start measuring their success as well. And the way to measure your success is looking at key performance indicators. And measuring success is about choosing the right key performance indicators that tell you when you're making an impact. So again, if your focus is, how many tons of food did you distribute? That's a key performance indicator. If you're talking about how many social welfare sessions that your organization did between a couple or a family or just an individual for their mental health, that is a key performance indicator. And these are the things that you want to showcase in your annual reports. When you go and talk to your donors about what you accomplished this year, these are the types of things that you should be mentioning. How much money did you raise? How many donors did you have this year? What was your engagement like on social media? And you want to look at what the average donation amount was too, and what their click-through rate was as well. It's not necessary for you to have to share that with people, but it's always good to share, be overabundant in sharing, and your donors will appreciate it. So you want to take inventory on your resources. You want to make sure that what you are doing resonates with people, and also, what you are doing resonates with people and the volunteers that you have. So what you want to make sure of is, what are the resources that your organization has? What will you need to meet your goals? And this includes everything from web development or data management platforms to the partners that you have and the major donors who can help you achieve your goals. So it's really important for you to go through and be able to talk about those things with your supporters. And once you've figured out what you'll need to determine if there are any gaps. Make note of how you can plan to fill any gaps and stay within the constraints of your existing resources, because those are going to be the challenges of all nonprofits. Whether you have a budget of $5 million or $500,000, you're always going to be constrained by the level of your existing resources. The challenges are going to be different for each organization, but the steps in which you take to become successful and plan are all the same. And it's a matter of how you do those effectively. So again, you want to identify who your staff are, who your volunteers are, who your partners and funders are, what your client relationship management tool looks like, the email platform that you utilize, the social media accounts that you have to share your message. And all of these things will be important in helping you develop your strategy and your plan. So typically you want to, think of a campaign and what is that message for that campaign? And remember, giving is not only about attracting new supporters, but it's about engaging the existing ones. Because again, it's easier to retain a donor than it is to find a new one. So it's really important at this point to segment your list, segment your audience and saying, okay, this is the message we're going to share with people who've been supporting our organization for 2 years or more. Because at that point, they likely know what your mission is. They likely know the type of work that you do. So you can talk about higher level things that your organization is hoping to achieve. Whereas for a new donor, they really need to be understanding what your mission is, what your vision is, and what your basic resources that you provide the community is. So if you can segment the theme, if you can segment the message, it's going to be more effective for your audience. And what we're going to do over the next few slides is talk about our audience, talk about our message, and what a call to action is. And what I want you to be thinking about during this time as well is, who's your typical donor? Who are they? How did they find out about your organization? What kinds of stories motivated them to give? Did they attend an annual banquet? Are they a personal family friend? Use this information to find the intersections between your existing donors and what you know about people who would like to give online. Because once you find that intersection, those are the people who are going to give to you online through social media. And what's really helpful is maybe even doing a survey of your recent donors of whether they've given online, right? You have them in your accounting software. You know that they gave within the last 6 months. You know that they're a first-time donor. And you send them a survey saying, we're targeting our first-time supporters, and we want to get to know what inspired you to give. And if you can do that, ask another 5 questions about how they found out about the organization, what inspired them to give, would they be likely to give again, and ask them in their own words, what does our organization do? Because then you can see how effective your mission statement is. Is it something that people remember? Are the programs and services that you provide things that your donors resonate with? So the more you can do that, the more you can better understand how to connect with your donors. And you'll be successful at reaching new audiences if you can better understand what drives them to give. So in developing audience and message, you have to think of who are you trying to reach? And this will probably be more than one type of person. You want to reach people who are the children, who are the adult children of your longtime supporters, right? So for people who've been supporting your organization, maybe it's the founders, you want to target their kids to keep the legacy of their parents going, right? You want to look at new donors and young professionals who may resonate with the services that you're providing. You want to look at what their interests are, what their demographics are, how old are they, what are their giving habits. And at the end of it, you want to be able to say, for existing supporters, this is going to be the call of action. And for new supporters, this is going to be the call of action. Again, it's all about segmenting how you reach out to people to be most effective in the way that they give back to you. So obviously our community is fantastic at throwing events. We throw a lot of events and we put a lot of time and resources into those events. So you need to look at what the most effective channel is to receive funding. And, you know, you can create buzz around any event, whether it's on social media or online or in person, right? It's about crafting that message and making your campaign multidimensional. Supporters may tune out your message in one of these channels, but they'll be really receptive to it in another channel. So you really need to look into what the best method is for each audience of your donors. And that's going to change through, like in the beginning, we talked about the generational divide of our donors and other things like that. So when people give to you and you get them in the door, you really need to think of what's the next step, right? You can't ask them for another donation right away. There's got to be some level of stewardship or post-giving nurturing that you do. You know, you want to obviously immediately thank them within 24 hours if you can. You want to thank them with a written letter in the post mail within 7 business days. You want to email them within, you know, that 24-hour period of notifying them. Of course, they're going to get a general blanket message if they donate to you online, and that's great and that's automated, but they also want to hear from people at the organization. So if you have a staff member who's in charge of fundraising, or maybe that's the executive director or some other person on the staff, as long as a human touches that interaction, it's going to be that more impactful. So again, you want to thank them. You want to make sure that you cultivate that relationship, and you want to make sure that you update them on the great work that your organizations are doing. So again, this goes into segmentation. If it's a donor who's given to you, you know, for the last 20 years, that message is going to be different than somebody who's given to you only 2 times in the last 5 years, right? So you need to make it personable. You really need to stress that their support is helping your organization accomplish your mission. And you need to look at, you know, try to thank them in 7 different ways and get creative with it. So it could be a postcard, it could be a letter, it could be an email, it could be a tweet, it could be a Facebook post, and look into the different ways. It could be a phone call from a board member, and really get people engaged in your organization to help with the whole life cycle of fundraising. Because you need to cultivate donors, you need to steward donors, and you need to ask donors. So all 3 of those aspects will involve different people throughout the process. But when you cultivate the donors, it could be a staff member. When you steward the donors, it could be a board member. When you ask the donors, it could be somebody who's also given, or a volunteer to your organization to make it more impactful. So these are all things about engaging your donors, and you need to find ways to keep them connected and rising up in the social ladder and in the giving ladder of engagement. And the best way, you know, you have your volunteers. There's no reason why your volunteers can't also be your donors. There's no reason why the people who are your advocates can't also be your supporters as well. So you need to look at, you know, throughout this whole life cycle of a donor with your organization, are they giving annually? Do you want to convert them into monthly donors? And that's all part of the strategy. So as we wind down and then open it up for questions, I wanted to leave you with some homework. And we talked about creating a strategic plan. And a strategic plan should really be done every 3 to 5 years, because your foresight of the organization, the board members, their terms, they often switch and change. So you should always be working on a strategic plan every year, because the first year you do it, you usually set up a 1-year goal to 3-year goal. And then you set people as the task managers of that specific goal. So they should be having a pulse of what your organization is trying to accomplish. And you revisit that on a quarterly basis. So every quarter, you're looking at what your strategic plan is, what your goals are, how you're going to accomplish them. And it should be good for 1 to 3 years. And then you do another strategic plan after that to focus on the next 3 years of your organization's growth. And the same thing with the development plan. These should be done typically annually. Whether your fiscal year is January to December or July to June, you want to make a development plan. And your fundraising goals should align with your organizational goals. Because if in your strategic plan you say, we need to increase the staff by, 25%, well, there's going to be some resources that it takes to make that goal accomplishable. So similarly, your marketing plan should be done on an annual basis. And it's all about focusing on creating content and creating a communications plan. And all of this will help you accomplish your mission. If you do these 3 things, you will be focused and targeted on accomplishing your goals when it comes to strategy, fundraising, and communications. So this is highly, highly important. If your organization does not have a strategic plan, a development plan, or a marketing plan, and you don't have the resources to do it, find somebody on your board who's an executive or knows somebody or a consultant. And, you may need to pay them for their time. But if you go through, a weekend where all of your board members are present and they're committed to creating a strategic plan, a consultant can help lead them through this entire process in a weekend. And then it's about, like I said, creating a timeline and creating people who are in charge of those goals to make sure you stay on track. And all of these plans are only going to be as effective as you implement them. So it's very important that you look at what it takes to create a strategic plan, a development plan, a marketing plan, and then implement it. And here are some resources that will help you do that. And, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Arafa, myself, and we can continue to help your organizations grow throughout this whole process. So thank you so much. Again, my name is Muhi Khwaja. I'm the co-founder of the American Muslim Fund, which is a community foundation dedicated to Muslim charitable giving. And you can find us on our social media platforms at A Muslim Fund, or you can find us on our website at amuslimfund.org. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it back over to Arafa, and we have the next 20 minutes to go over any questions that you have and go from there. So I will figure out how to get this back to Arafa.
Thank you, Muhi. Really appreciate it. It was very informative and extremely thorough. I hope folks that joined, I know some folks were able to join a little bit later, were able to benefit from the content. And again, don't worry, we'll be sending out the slides that Muhi's generously going to be sharing with all the participants who registered shortly after the webinar. So now we're going to just take some questions with the time remaining that we have. If folks could just use the raised hand feature on their participant panel, then we can take questions that way, and then folks can unmute themselves. There also should be a chat feature as well, too, if folks want to use the chat.
I guess I did that great of a job.
Muhi, I don't know, did you want to quickly recap some of the key points from the earlier slides?
Sure. Am I still presenting, or should I just kind of go over?
Yeah, if you want to just kind of like briefly recap some of the important takeaways.
Yeah, sure. So it's about making the most of your social media. It's about learning who your donors are, segmenting your communication to them. You know, if you're on social media, that's great. If you have done crowdfunding, that's awesome. Many of your organizations have an email marketing platform that you utilize. So go into the nitty gritty. If your organization has a national focus and you do different things in different states, then focus on creating lists for your participants and donors and supporters in those specific states that A, you might be visiting, or B, that you might be interested in getting more information about. And again, that is relevant to the Bay Area here locally. If you know you have donors in the city of San Francisco, but you're doing an event in, you know, San Jose, they may not make it out there, but it's still good to keep them informed. But what you really want to do is collect all of the names of people who you know in San Jose for sure and send them a separate message as well. So it's good to always do like a blanket, here's what we're up to, here's what we're doing, but then maybe in the next week or two, do a segmented list pull to those specific people. And again,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I think there's a question in the chat. Mantilo, did you want to kind of elaborate on the question?
Just, you gave a number of the Muslims who mainly give in Ramadan and those who mainly give not in Ramadan.
Yeah, so
that's all. I just missed the numbers.
yeah, I don't necessarily have like accurate factual numbers, but you know, having worked in Muslim nonprofits, and you've seen this as well, is that majority of Muslims will give in Ramadan, but then they'll also give again in the end of the year. So it's very important for you as an organization to not miss out on that opportunity. You want to make sure that, you know, like this time of year right now, right? You want to be planning what message are you sending to your donors in November and December, right? You want to have a plan saying this is the message we've come up with. These are the amount of people that we've helped this year, provided services to, and it's all possible because of your donations. You made this possible. And you want to make sure that you always focus on what your supporters are doing to help you accomplish your mission.
Okay. Could you list or give us the best tracking software for tracking donors?
So there are plenty. And you know, obviously it comes with a price tag and everything like that. But the leader in the industry is a software company called Blackbaud. Blackbaud. And they have a variety of softwares from like entry-level small nonprofits to large mega scale nonprofits as well. But on the lower end, those softwares are probably still costing around $6,000 a year. So it is a pretty hefty investment for smaller nonprofits to look into their softwares. But another software company is called Give Effect. And this will help you do everything. It's your one-stop shop. They'll help you process your online donations. They'll help you communicate with your donors with email integration. They'll help you pull and produce reports on your donors' giving history. They'll help you do event registration and planning. So whereas you may be using 5 different programs for these 5 different causes, this brings it all into one place. And that's also the case with Blackbaud as well. So I find great value as a fundraising professional in these softwares. And if your organization is considering hiring full-time or part-time fundraising staff, these are essential tools for them to be able to effectively do their job.
Are these six? Are you the example being 6,000 a year, maybe less, maybe more? Is that per year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is, you don't own it; they license it to you, or somebody.
Correct.
But they give you support.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
And for any of the folks who joined late, are there any other folks that had questions, or were there certain key things they feel that they wanted covered?
This is Hari. First of all, Jazakallah khair for the great information. It's very detailed and informative. I have maybe a little bit technical question. How do you enter donors into your database? How do you create an emailing list so that it doesn't go into their junk box? Is there a process that you can get into their trusted? Are there any tools that help you with this?
So help me understand that a little bit better. You want
to upload, for example, you have a database.
Correct.
And you want to put them in your mailing list.
Correct.
But you don't want to get into their spam folder, if you will. Is there some process or some technique that can be done so to avoid that problem?
Yeah, so typically if your donor or whoever the recipient is adds whatever email address into their contact folder, it'll always get to them, right? So for instance, what's the name of your organization?
Ibn Sina Community Center.
Okay, so whatever your email address is, info@Ibn Sina, whatever the URL is, if your organizers and supporters add that email address into their contacts, then the next time you send them an email from MailChimp or Constant Contact or any of these email platforms, it'll reassure that it gets to them. I haven't had too many issues with it reaching a spam folder. Typically, all the organizations that I sign up for to receive email newsletters, I always get them. So I think they're pretty accurate, but there is that off chance that it could end up in a spam folder.
Okay. So you do want them to actually somehow get into their contact, basically.
Right.
Okay. Jazakallah khair.
So there was an earlier question and about would potentially NCIC consider doing a future webinar just on marketing. And so if there is enough demand, and we could probably take a poll or reach out to organizations, and we would highly consider doing a future webinar just on marketing specifically. There are so many amazing topics covered just within this presentation that in and of itself could probably be a full hour broken out. So. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Okay, this is Laurel.
Yep.
So I'm just waiting. If nobody else is asking a question, I have a question.
Please go ahead.
So one of the things, a chicken and egg problem for small organizations is how do you hire somebody to do fundraising if you don't have the money yet? Now, our organization relied on volunteers.
Right.
For the first 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's been tough.
All right.
But 10 years, it took 10 years to some things take 10 years to accomplish.
Right.
And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that entities don't create an RFP or an RFA or a willingness to donate based on what you do. You have, unless you want mission creep, you have to find somebody who's where there's a match. It's like a marriage.
Right.
But I digress. So getting back to the chicken egg question. So in my opinion, grant writers who are very useful for some things have moved from being paid on a percentage, that is, they take the risk and they're rewarded based on success, to saying it's not ethical for us to work that way. We need to be paid hourly. Now, I personally think that that's not true. That is, you know, they want consistent income, and I do understand that, but it makes it even harder, right?
Mhm.
So you can't go find a grant writer and say, if you get this 100,000, we'll give you 10. Okay.
Right.
Now, the people who do event planning, they don't mind charging per event or getting a percentage. It's the grant writers. Then there's this middle space between people who do like the strategic fundraising.
Right.
Okay? And I wonder what you know about the state of the art there.
Mhm.
Is it possible to and be considered ethical, even if you disagree with it, right? To hire somebody nowadays, say hire them on minimum wage, right?
Mhm.
And then say, you'll get a bonus based on 10% of what your work and the work you manage brings in.
Right.
It was a mix of
Mhm.
some consistency and some risk. So it's more like sales.
Right. Right.
And really, you know, this is very closely related to sales.
Sure. That is a great and loaded question, and I'll do my best to answer it.
I can chime in a little bit after you if you want.
Okay. So the Association of Fundraising Professionals is any fundraiser's kind of professional group.
Right.
AFP has a standard of ethics that we are asked to follow. And as I'm a certified fundraising executive, I've taken the oath of not taking any percentage of money that I've raised as income. The way that I've seen organizations go around this is exactly like you said. You know, you'll receive an hourly rate or a salary, and there are performance bonuses that are tied to not specifically the amount of money you bring in, but around your performance metrics, right? So, you know, you could say the organization's budget is $1 million, but you know, if my metric is to successfully host 3 events where we gain, you know, 100 new donors, right? Those metrics are what will give me my performance bonus, as opposed to strictly being tied to the amount that was raised. So those are some more creative ways that you can go around it. And what I would say in terms of, you know, the chicken and the egg is really do what's best for your organization. You know, if you're not equipped to hire a staff member and pay them a livable wage here in California, then don't do that, right? What I would rather suggest you do is hire somebody on a part-time basis. And if it is a grant writer and they do get grants, still pay them an hourly rate, but encourage it that, you know, if they submit, you know, 10 letters of interest and 1 successful grant, regardless of the amount, they get an X performance bonus. Because there is a lot of risk in that, and there is a lot of work that goes into writing these grants and finding foundations that will support the type of work that you do. So I think that you should always focus on good retention of your own staff to keep them loyal employees of your services as well. So you want to do what's best for the organization and what's best for your contractors or employees as well.
And just to quickly add, again, I'm new to consulting in general, but I've been in the nonprofit field for, I would say, about like 13 to 14 years. And I would say for fundraising specifically, I think Muhi touched upon this, but again, the success rate of getting grants is actually really competitive and it's not easy. And if you have a grant writer, it's not necessarily to say that they will automatically get the first 5 grants that they apply for.
Right.
It's the same amount of work. Whether you're putting a good fundraising event or a good grant or a fundraising event in general and a grant in general, it's the same amount of work. And so I think in that sense, it is a little unfair to have these, performance enhancement benchmarks, so to speak, or, to basically provide compensation based on certain key deliverables, given the fact that the work is being conducted, and again, Muslim organizations in general, in my experience, aren't necessarily always upfront in terms of articulating this is what our benchmarks or set goals and that sort of thing is. As long as it's a mutually agreed upon contract or agreement and both parties are okay with it, I think then in that case, and that seems fair.
And to add on to that, fundraising, whether it's grants or with individuals or corporations, it's all about relationships, right? So you're only going to be successful in a grant if A, you're talking to the decision maker there. You're attending their webinars that they have. So it's not necessarily, oh, let's put together a PDF document of all of our resources and it's magically going to happen. There's a lot of strategy, science, and art in getting that grant, in getting an increased gift. So what I would say to you is go to your top donors in your organization who have given you 5 figures or more, or people who have consistently given on an annual basis. Talk to them, say, this is our goal. We need to support a part-time staff member, and it's going to cost us $50,000 next year to do. I know you continuously give. Can you help give additional so that we can reach that extra $50,000? And then that way you have a little bit of cushion, right? You can hire somebody on a 10-month contract at $5,000 a month to really do this work. And that could be a full-time contract. It could be a part-time, depending on what works best for you and the organization. But again, if you 1099 somebody, they're not seeing that $5,000. It's half of it's going to the IRS, right? So you really have to think of supporting people who are going to be supporting you as well.
On that note, I wanted to thank everybody. If there's any, again, additional questions, you can email Muhi directly or email me and I can make sure he gets those. Again, we're going to make the slides available to everybody who registered, and we will release our recording as well. And lastly, I just wanted to briefly point out that, again, NCIC has a number of events going on this year, including several more webinars and then also our civic engagement panels. You'll see on the screen we have one coming up next Friday at MCA in Santa Clara. And it will be in the evening after Maghrib and include Supervisor Dave Cortez, Hussam Hagag, Razi Muhyiddin, Samina Usman from CARE SFBA, and Reshma Inamdar from NCIC. And so these are actually folks who are engaged and active in the community right now, civically, whether it's through planning commissions or through different positions that they hold. If you have an upcoming event for your organization and you'd like to add it, we have updated our website recently. So we have a Bay Area Muslim Community Event Calendar. You can visit our website and check it out under the Events tab. And if you have any other questions related to NCIC or this webinar, feel free to email me directly at avora@norcalcouncil.org. I want to thank again Muhi Khwaja for doing such an amazing job presenting on such an important topic, and really appreciate his time and coming out. And thank you for everybody for taking the time out today. I know everybody has busy schedules, but we appreciate you taking the time out to get more information and to be informed.
Thank you.
Thank you.